Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event. Let's get ready to rumble!
And that's right, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Best Seat in the House podcast. As always, I'm your host, Rob Cramer, alongside my co-host, Daniel Bobo Kurlan, and we're being my friend. As you can see, my entire face is red. I'm live in Port St Lucie and having a good time. Dan, how you doing?
I'm doing good. For one thing, I gotta say, you literally have seen what happened to you. Seems to have happened to me numerous times on trips to Florida, especially if I've had to use some cheap sunscreen other than what I usually use, because it took a while, but I did find a good sunscreen product to use for those hot days. That's never seems to fail me on hot days.
I know, I don't even get it, man. I went to Walmart. We got everything we needed. I sprayed it myself. It's like, I forget what it was, like 30 or 40 SPF. You figure that should be enough for my stupid face, but I guess it's not. What are you gonna do? I just got to make sure I aloe the next few days, or it's really gonna be bad.
Yeah. Trust me. When I've gotten sunscreen, it's been that bad. Trust. And bear in mind, I'm the son of a ginger.
Very true.
My dad was a ginger. Just to let you guys know.
Okay. You definitely have a stack against you.
But anyway, I have to say, talk about a crazy turn of events since we last broadcast. I mean, I was getting ready to watch I forgot what it was. It was a first round pool play of the World Baseball Classic, right? I think it was a U.S. versus I believe it was U.S. versus Colombia. My memory is correct, right?
Yeah, that.
I'm getting ready to watch the game, and before that, I'm gonna catch the last couple of innings of the game between Puerto Rico and I forgot who they were playing, but the point about the game is after Puerto Rico had won that game, of course, you see them celebrating. I saw some of the most. I cannot describe what it was like seeing that on TV. Edwin Diaz of all people, getting hurt. But it's just like, I don't want to see anyone get hurt like that. And
the Edwin Diaz injury is a big. Diaz goes down. Free it down for Team Canada pretty early on. There's been a lot of debate over the last couple of days about where it should be played, if it should even be played. From the last couple of years, baseball negatively after all that.
Well, for one thing, I gotta say that what I feel about the World Baseball Classic is, it's kind of mixed opinions about it. It was a lot of fun tournament to watch, even though the U.S. kind of fell short of it. But at the same time, I feel like I agree with like what Max Scherzer said, that more pitchers, and I noticed that this maybe not just on the U.S. other teams, with pitchers that were not wanting to take part in this, and he said maybe it should be done like in November, which I feel they're gonna, if they really want to do this, and if there's players that really want to take part in this, I just feel it'd be better for the baseball to do it in November, because sometimes I've seen of average, and this is bear in mind the context, of course, sometimes we see some injuries in baseball that are really bad, but based on the average of like some of the injuries in baseball that usually like maybe not keep players out for a couple of weeks, maybe a month or so. I just feel the recovery time. I feel that November they you sometimes you maybe have less likelihood the player might have to miss some time because that barring if it's an injury that's really bad. Of course, that like that injury that Edwin Diaz had, of course, is like a really it's one of those cases where sometimes you got an injury that was really bad, and I got to remind people that were complaining about this. One, players do get injured during spring training. You got to remember that. Other thing, Edwin Diaz did not get that injury during the game. So officially it was a non-game injury. Like even though it happened, he was celebrating of all things.
You know, there is something that, even though what you said is true, there is something that to me almost makes it worse. You know what I mean? Like, what people saying is, yeah, people get injured during the preseason all the time, regular season. You know, you always see these different injuries come out of spring training. Totally true. But the thing that sucks about it is that you can almost accept that. Like, if Edwin Diaz got hurt closing for the Mets, you know, even if it was him celebrating afterward, I could take that a lot more than I could take it in Puerto Rico. The Mets are paying him $20 million a year. He just signed a $100 million contract, and he's not going to pitch until a year and a half after he signed it. You know what I mean? So even though you are right, and I'm kind of looking from both people that are saying, hey, you know, if a guy gets hurt from my team, I can understand it, but getting hurt for a different team, that's a different story. That also makes sense to me, right?
Yeah, that does make sense also that way. But yeah, that injury just really sucks. I feel like it's gonna be back to being with Edwin Diaz when we had him, especially the last couple of years. I mean, looked like 2019. He looked like he was kind of getting used to pitching in New York. You saw 2021. You kind of saw signs. You know what? Maybe Edwin Diaz looks like he's maybe a better pitcher than we're leading to believe after that season. Of course, 2020 he pitched pretty decent, and 2022 he had maybe his best year as a Met, and as close as we had to a closer that did not make me want to have a near heart attack. Now we're going back to. I hope it's not a situation where it's everything but the kitchen sink, and we somehow figure out. I mean, it might take a couple of course over the course of the season, maybe during spring training. So far, David Robinson is the first man up in trying to fill this closer void, but I don't know how comfortable I'm gonna feel when we get to the bullpen these days.
Yeah, fortunately, that's very true. And I mean, the bullpen was supposed to be a big plus for the Mets now, and now it's kind of a question mark. And there's been a lot of word that the Mets looking at Zach Britton, the former lefty, or the lefty, the former Oriole, that was the one of the best closers in baseball under Buck Showalter, really in the middle of last decade, middle to late. He ended up with the Yankees. After that, he signed a big contract. Now he's had arm problems the last year or two, but he's working out, and the
Are you
there. Yeah. Dan, you there?
Can you hear me? You're breaking up.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You just broke up a little bit. You're breaking up, Captain.
Don't have the power.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dan. So I the one thing that I do have to say though is that there's always going to be things that we like about this, things that we don't like about this. But let's get back to the final. Okay, so gets all the way to the final. We hammer Cuba in the semis to get to the finals. 14-2 was the final there. And Japan came back in the ninth inning to knock off for a rematch, and now it was the U.S. and Japan in the finals. 3-2, we ended up dropping to them. What'd you think of that game, man? I mean,
that game, for one thing, Ed, especially because of the outcome, it gave me 2006 NLCS Game 7 vibes. Even though unlike the 2006 NLCS, unlike that game, I'm watching this one in my living room instead of being there in person. But I'm watching this game, and it just felt like we were going to win it. It was like a close game, but I felt somehow we were going to win it. The pitching looked like it was better than expected going into that game. I mean, we all could say how a lot of us thought that the U.S. we were kind of lacking a little bit in pitching because a lot of pitchers. It was remember the whole argument. Remember, like I just said about November, how it should have been in November, like Max Scherzer said, how he said more pitchers would have wanted to take part in it because of how difficult it is for pitchers to ramp that level in March.
Yep, you're right.
But anyway, I'm watching this game. It's close the whole time. I felt like, and like in the 2007 NLCS, remember Carlos Beltran had a monster of a postseason, but I feel like the NL that Game 7 really was really much. Similar thing with a guy Trey Turner who's having a monster of a WBC. I mean, like it was like the. It was also a situation that kind of felt a little unusual, being the fact that Trey Turner, all those hits he's gotten against us. I mean, when he was with the Washington Walgreens, and of course, we got to deal with this guy now. He's a Philly now, so we're still dealing with this guy, but that I'm normally rooting against. But since this is an entire country's team,
yeah, he had a. That is one thing we do have to tip our hat to Trey. Is he had a of a WBC, and I'm not looking forward to facing him in the regular season this year again. We got lucky for a year and a half. He was traded out of the division. Unfortunately, so now we're gonna have to deal with it. And when you look at everything that you mentioned, nobody the downfall. The hitting was we Cuba to advance. Now, Dan, what is the most disappointing thing, other than obviously the US, is the disappointing thing that these guys who this lineup done. I mean, you get the leadoff hitter on in the ninth inning, and then as soon as Mookie Betts grounded into that double play, you knew we were in trouble. So, I mean, is that the most disappointing part?
That was like I've gotten upset. Usually moments like when I'm watching, usually a moment like that we've grounded into double play situation where we stranded runners on base. You might hear me yelling out, "You're killing me, Smalls." That was the loudest I think anyone's heard me yelled at during the game so far. And I was like, ugh. And then I said, ugh. And then here's like Mike Trout, who kind of has been striking out and he just struck out, and I was like, ugh, great. Of course, Trout fails during a postseason situation.
Of course, right? And yeah, but I mean, Dan, you have to mention how sick slider that Ohtani threw him.
Oh, that just had shades of NLCS Game 7. Adam Wainwright. Ugh.
Yeah,
like
really
I
did.
felt.
I can move on. Is there anything that you wanted to wrap up on and just say on the WBC before we move on?
Last thing I was going to say was that of course that strikeout just had shades of that last stud of the 2006 NLCS, and I think the same reaction. Only I can tell you that reaction felt 10 times as worse. 2006 that NLCS just felt like I can explain it, but anyway, on lighter notes, how about the Rangers? That stretch of wins we've been having.
Yeah, man. I mean, unfortunately, last game that came to a close as we lost 3-2 last night. You know that they lost the guard, and the thing that really hurt about that game too is that, you know, obviously last weekend crazy with the games on Saturday and Sunday. The Rangers absolutely destroyed the Penguins 6-2, and then they absolutely destroyed. I'm sorry, it was 6-0 on Saturday. On Sunday, they absolutely destroyed the Predators 7-0, scoring 6 goals in the first year. So I mean, it's a disappointing loss last night, but I feel like the Rangers are really heading in the right direction.
Yep, exactly. Same here. I feel like this team's going to be dangerous come playoff time. Of course, that loss. I was watching the. I watched the game. I watched the game after work via my DVR. I recorded it, but man, that loss just hurt really bad last second. Ugh. Even worse, I got a friend, one of my Twitter friends who's a Canes fan is just he's bragging about it. You there? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. But yeah, my friend of
So
mine,
sorry.
bragging about it after that loss.
Yeah, that makes sense. Brag, because that was a big win for them. And the thing that stinks about that loss for the Rangers is that they were ahead the entire game. They had a goal in the first, and you know, they go up. Well, the Canes tie it midway through the third. So if you think that means the time in the Thursday that the Rangers had the Rangers scored the last 2 goals in that game. Then they scored 6 straight goals, obviously on Saturday, win 6-0. So that's 8. They scored 7 goals on Sunday in a 7-0 win to make that 15 straight goals. And then the first goal last night made it 16 straight. So the Rangers were just unprecedented. Without allowing one, that they were just on a crazy run, man. And you know, unfortunately, it ended last night. What we saw last really lets you know what this team can be can become. The first last night, that was the first game back for Lindgren. So this is the first actual time that we've had a full lineup. The Patrick Kane trade went down, and they had Senko, all that stuff. I mean, they've had Harper in, who's done a good job the last couple of weeks. You know, what do you think about Ben Harper? He's a pretty good job for Lindgren and everybody else while they've been down, right?
Yeah, I have to say the guy did a good job in holding this team together during that time when Lindgren was injured.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. So now what we have to do is tough game Tuesday night. Now they just got to go out and get the win on Thursday in Carolina. That's the only thing that you can say. They're in a position right now where, fortunately, because of that loss, they're probably out of the division run. I know they still run the table and stuff. They could still have a chance, but realistically, is at hand than the Rangers. It looks like the division, and division probably was a long shot anyway, but at that loss, not with the full name off, if the Rangers had gotten 1 point out of it, maybe that I'd feel differently. But I don't know, Dan. What do you think? Do you think that list in the division title?
I feel like now the rest of the way it's pretty much try to leapfrog the Devils for second place in the Metropolitan Division, and hopefully have home ice against the Devils, which is going to be, oh my god, that's gonna be a nerve-wracking playoff series. I could tell you that.
Yeah, you got that right, man. That's going to be a crazy playoff season. Every time these teams get together, it's always crazy. I mean, they played a few teams in the 2000s, late, whatever you want to call it. I guess we're still in the 2000s technically, but so when you look at it, the Rangers, it's a deep matchup of two deep teams, and that's probably going to be our first round. Do you think, as we stand today, that Rangers can take them down?
What were you saying? You were kind of breaking up on your end.
Do you think that the Rangers can take down the Devils in a playoff series, or are they too deep?
I just feel like we could take down the Devils in a playoff series. It's gonna be gonna be a very hard fought matchup, but somehow I feel like we could take them down in the playoff series. The last couple of games we played, they were nail biters. The last time we faced the Devils, and we had beat them earlier in the year. So I feel it's gonna be a close game. We're gonna come out on top. It's gonna be me making a lot of noise that the whole block will hear me. Of course, as always during playoff hockey like this, and of course, as always, as I mentioned before, the first round will be the beard starting to grow.
Exactly, and it's what we got to hope for, man. I think that it's really going to help the Devils, so I think we're in pretty good shape too. And so let's keep rolling here. We're gonna have a little bit of an abbreviated episode. It'll be a little bit more normal next week when I'm in a better lit room. So to get back on that one, but before we do get out of here, though, I did want to do a little spring training talk, and I did get those working out really in a couple of seconds and talk about how we're feeling about the Mets. I mean, we did get to see Kodai Senga pitch today. This was the first thing I saw when I got to practice this morning. This was Wayne Kirby, Joey Cora, and Eduardo Escobar working out. They were hitting Escobar ground balls to kind of help him with the defense and make his defense better, because I didn't even realize this, Dan, but did you realize that Eduardo Escobar was one of the worst rated defensive third baseman last year?
I did not realize that. I mean, for one thing, he played a pretty decent third base last year.
Yeah, I thought so too. It was surprising, but if you look at his defensive run saved and all these new defensive metrics, apparently Eduardo was one of the lower rated defensemen. So it was good to see him out there. Here's another one of him. This is Joey Cora getting right there, right to Eduardo, makes the play, and he did pretty good. I mean, he booked a couple of them. For the most part, Eduardo Escobar did really good out there today. He really commend the guy for going out there and practicing like this, especially, he's a big leaguer that's been in the leagues for a long time, so you got to give credit to him for putting in that effort, right?
Yeah, you got to give credit to that. That's nice footage you got there from I think that's the main backfield, if I'm correct.
Yes, that's the main backfield right behind the stadium, and I really got to give credit to the Mets and Steve Cohen and Buck Showalter, because I'm the type of guy, I've been coming down to spring training for years. Although because of COVID, I actually haven't been down since 2019. But between 2008 and 2019, I went about 9 or 10 times, and I love spring training. It's one of my favorite things, and they put so much money. But you can tell Buck's fingerprints are all over a lot of different things they had back there, and I think they did a really good job of really tip my cap to all those guys. And I actually, this is a little thing of me walking into the stadium when I first got in there. But Dan, so what did you think? Did you watch the game today of Senga's start today?
Yep, I watched it. I was actually trying to see if I could find you on TV, and I would have actually tried to screen cap it if you were. Where exactly were you sitting?
Well, I was kind of all over the place today because it was my first game there in a while. So I'm there in the video, like you saw, I went all the way down the third base line and checked out. They have a tiki bar at the end there, and they have a whole bunch of new sections. They have like an overlook, like the brand new clubhouse, completely rebuilt, and you can actually stand and look down onto the players that are walking from the clubhouse to the stadium, and it's a pretty cool view. As a matter of fact, I have this right here is kind of where I'm talking about. It's a little bit more to the towards the outfield and center field, but this is the spot where they actually let you overlook the bullpen, and you have all these guys warming up, and there you see Senga is stretching out right now, and he's throwing to one of the minor league catchers, and Omar Narvaez is waiting there to catch him once he gets down, and once Senga was properly stretched out and ready to go. But what did you think of Senga today, man?
I think it looked good so far. It's a little too early to tell because we didn't really get to see. We personally didn't get to see many of his starts because prior to this, all his starts during spring training games were the road spring training games. And for those of you who live in the New York area are familiar with, SNY only broadcasts the spring training games that are in Port St Lucie. So those starts we didn't really get to see, and the footage that we did see, I don't know what was really like broadcast quality footage. It was just footage from someone who was holding a camera from, I guess, maybe in some seats behind home plate. But look good. This is the first time we really got to see him in a broadcast quality footage of it. And
Yeah, it's true. And what were you gonna say, Dan?
I was gonna say, you see, so far, so good so far. At the same time, I know maybe it might take a start or two for him to hopefully get comfortable in the majors. Especially he's got to get used to this new pitch clock rules that really threw a real challenge to not only come majors, but of course also the pitch clock rules that are in place here.
It's a lot to get used to. I mean, you mentioned it on the show last week when Japanese pitchers only pitch once a week, so that's going to be a period. And
I also got to commend the Cody Singer for making a decision not to pitch at a World Baseball Classic. He was probably smart enough to knew that it was a situation that maybe. Remember, I said sometimes the circumstances affect when pitchers want to, because of the ramping up and everything, spring training, where they want to go, or they're just coming back from an injury, whether they want to take part in the World Baseball Classic or not. Singa's case, it was a wise decision, being the fact that he needed to get used to pitching in the big leagues, and So far,
true. Yeah, you're right. And Inga really had some good stuff today. He was popping the mitt, consistently high, even touched 100 a couple of times. He was he. I don't really know. I didn't know if he threw the ghost fork today. I'm sure he did, but
I, they said he wasn't doing the broadcasters. I don't know if you could if you because I know the apparently the SNY app works out of state because it recognizes like the email address, the account information. But if you were to pull out the SNY app to put the foot to hear like the broadcast audio, they were saying that he wasn't throwing the pitch today because he's trying to work on some of his other pitches during spring training. That's what I heard. At least this start. Also, and
okay.
of course, like I said, I cannot wait to see Kodai Senga's reaction to the seven line army the first time he pitches, and it happens to be a day that whether it's on the home or on the road. And I think he'll really hit. I think he'll, like I said, he'll probably get a kick out of the comments about the seven line army when he goes to an away game because I like watching travel videos, especially places I want to maybe visit one day. And when I was watching some travel videos from Japan, right, this footage of someone going to a baseball game in Japan, and they were pointing out how almost all these games, there's always like a little cheering section, the visiting team, whether it's like the team just sells the tickets or it's a section they designate, or maybe they do what the seven line army does. They get a block of they sell a block of tickets for these away games, but that that footage I saw of visiting fans having a cheering section like that reminds me of the Seven Line Army. And so I feel like he'll feel right at home once he gets his first experience, when he gets to see what the Seven Line Army is like at a game.
Oh, no doubt about it, man. And he's gonna. I agree. It's gonna be really. Because, obviously, we're keeping our fingers crossed. Yeah, so I'm very optimistic with what we've seen so far. Obviously he ran into a little bit of trouble today, but like you mentioned, if he wasn't even through or he's not his full repertoire, so it puts me a little more at ease. And actually, Dan, we're going to be getting out of here in a minute, but I did want to ask you. Now, obviously, I didn't get a chance to really see any of it, but I know Steve was.
I thought Steve Kelb was. He looked like he was doing a good job. But at the same time, I mean, you could tell it's kind of his first time really doing like a major broadcast like this. But I feel like Steve Gelbs will get. I feel like he'll get better at this if each time he's had to fill in. I mean, let's face it, a certain broadcaster calling the Super Bowl by the name of Kevin Burkhardt had the same role as Steve Gelbs at SNY. So I got I guess I could say that Steve Gelbs is filling a role that leads to big things.
Very true. Very true, my friend. And yeah, so you know what? With that, I guess that's for the week. And any plugs for yourself?
Sure, you could follow me as you can see on the screen right there, my Twitter page, my Twitter account, Bobo NYC on Twitter, and of course Bobo718DK on on Instagram on Instagram. And of course, also Daniel Kurlan on YouTube for all your Bobo content.
Absolutely. And Coach, he's got a lot of great stuff on Twitter and YouTube and anywhere you can find him. Instagram. Check me out on Twitter and Cramer, and you can check us out on Twitter at BSith Also, don't forget to like to the YouTube channel. And if you feel we've earned it, give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. We really appreciate all the support. And yeah, and also on Instagram. We got all that housekeeping out of the way. Thanks for watching. And Bobo Kurlan, and we'll catch you next week on the Best Seat in the House podcast. Thanks for watching, everybody.